Hey everybody, welcome to Culinary Characters Unlocked. I'm David Page. On this episode, a chef shaking up a major American city by opening a restaurant he says is world-class and unlike anything else already there. The city's Philadelphia, the restaurant is Provenance, and the chef is Nicholas Bazik. Chef, thank you for joining me. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Glad you're here. I came across your name reading Philadelphia Magazine, where the headline said, Provenance is Philly's most ambitious restaurant if it can survive. What did they mean by that?
Well, restaurants like mine aren't commonplace here in Philadelphia. So I think they're implying that because it's so ambitious, is Philadelphia going to receive it?
According to this same article, you have ruffled feathers and spent a ton of cash in your audacious quest to build a Michelin-grade restaurant more or less from scratch. Is that what Philadelphia wants? Is that what Philadelphia wants?
Well, we're booked through until February, so some Philadelphians want it.
What's causing all the controversy?
I don't think there's actually controversy. Newspapers and magazines need to sell newspapers and magazines just like anybody else. The title of that article kind of goes against what the heart of the article is, which is very supportive and positive.
Okay, so tell me about this restaurant. What's so audacious? What are you doing?
Well, it's a 25-seat restaurant that serves a 20 to 25-course tasting menu. In Philly, we have lots of restaurants that serve tasting menus, but they're more traditional, I guess, in the sense where this restaurant is the first restaurant that started out as a tasting menu restaurant. It didn't pivot. It didn't alter its course throughout, its life. This was created to provide this type of experience.
Is it your goal to be 3 Michelin star? I mean, Michelin doesn't yet do Philly, but are you trying to build a restaurant that could get 3 Michelin stars or be at the top of the world's 50 best list?
Those aren't my motives whatsoever. My motive is to provide the best work environment I possibly could, because I think that translates to the best dining experience that I can have, or provide for my guests, rather.
Well, did you endure less than optimal experiences on your way up?
I think everybody has. I think that's commonplace, especially when you get older in your career. You inherit things that either don't work or just bad systems or bad protocols or SOPs. So if the goal is to get to a place where you can open your own restaurant, being able to really write the narrative is what I tried to do.
Well, how'd you get here? Where were you born? Was it a foodie, quote unquote, family? Did you always want to do this?
No, I was born in a little town called Harleysville, like an hour or so outside of Philadelphia. A very humble upbringing. Food wasn't a strong focal point, but I always enjoyed it, and I always enjoyed the history behind things, and that's what I studied in school, was history and theology.
You throw that off like I always also did that, but you were on your way to becoming a serious academic, were you not?
That was the idea.
Tell me more about this.
In a different life, I'd be sitting at some bucolic liberal arts school in Vermont right now with a tweed jacket on or something and a pipe.
Well, you went to a bucolic school in Vermont.
I did. Called Green Mountain, yeah.
And you were studying history, theology.
Correct, yeah.
And then?
I kind of took a couple turns and ended up in restaurants.
Well, a couple of turns. Well, you were trying to be a musician first.
Correct. Yeah, it's a myriad of...
You're on the PhD track.
Yep.
Then you become a musician? How did that happen?
I always played music. Being in Vermont was limiting in my ability to play because I was in rural Vermont. So I moved back to Philadelphia, and while in school and touring, I started working at a restaurant. And I saw the performance aspect, I saw the accrual of knowledge, I saw the understanding of relationships, and that all kind of morphed into perfect expression of being an academic and a performer. There's so much behind what food is, as opposed to just a plate that's in front of you that you eat, that is so engaging for someone who thinks like I do, which is the the who, the why, the what, and the where. And my ability to process those things, and also my desire to teach other people, just made a whole lot of sense. If my goal was to become a teacher, there's no better teaching platform than being in a kitchen.
What was your path? You were like what, a dishwasher in college, or?
No, I started in the front of the house. I started as a food runner. My main interactions were just with the chef. So I was able to ask every single question. And I was very fortunate that the chefs that I worked for just had an extreme amount of knowledge about things. It was really great to be able to ask questions about this product and then be given an answer like, well, in the 1600s in Spain, they did this and it was influenced by that. Like, that really resonated with me. There's a lineage of things and there's a traceability of how things come. And, history is interesting, but historiography is even more interesting.
Okay, explain that word.
Historiography being the study of the way that people write history. As a chef, we read a cookbook, but it's completely influenced by how other people write about food and what their perspective is. And that's just terribly fascinating to me.
Any examples? I'm fascinated by, for example, choucroute.
Choucroute.
A German dish served in France, revealing the fact that part of France was once Germany.
Correct.
So there's a story to that. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of the spice trade, the things that are influenced so heavily by the course of history has impacted the way that people perceive flavor and perceive their own culture. Choucroute's a good example. Like the border of Alsace and Strasbourg and that area has flopped back and forth historically so many times that there's their own cultural identity to express something that we just identify as blanketly French. So it's all very fascinating.
So from that first job as a runner, what was your food career? You hadn't gone to culinary school.
Correct, I did not. The chef that I was working for, Jim Burke, who sadly passed away a couple years ago, he didn't go to culinary school, so I think that my path was kind of dictated by that. Like, you're working for someone who at the time was also opening a restaurant that was extremely ambitious and not dissimilar to what I'm doing now. But seeing him and his path, and that made it very like, oh, I can do that. I don't need to go to culinary school. I already spent a lot of time at college, but I could learn and I could get paid to learn, basically.
How'd you move up the chain? You ended up going through a series of Philadelphia's better restaurants, did you not?
Correct. I worked at James, the name of the restaurant. I worked all the front of the house positions. And then I asked if I could work garde, which the owner and his wife, who Christina, very graciously let me join the kitchen during the summer, and I got some practical experience and didn't really want to stop from there.
Well, what is it that hit your soul that made you say, this is what I should do? I've spent all this time and energy in my life studying other things, but now I'm going to do this.
The ability to accrue more knowledge about food is endless. It's just constant learning. And my desire to keep growing, it seemed like a perfect fit, while I could also tangibly make something that made people happy, which is not dissimilar to singing a song that makes someone happy. There are too many correlations between what I wanted out of life, which is just being a great host and being hospitable, and with the career path that I chose.
Mm-hmm. Were you always a people pleaser?
I think so.
When you're looking for cooks these days, are you finding a pool of candidates who still have that passion to cook, or do they want to be TV stars? I think in my restaurant, there's a passion for people who want to cook and become chefs. And another reason why I opened up a restaurant that was this small and this direct was I would attract people that want to work within this environment. I kind of have the choice, right? People are coming to me. I'm not going after anybody. I'm not posting culinary agents ads. It's just a very natural thing for people to want to work at a space like this here in Philadelphia, where they don't need to go to New York or San Francisco or fly across an ocean to work in this type of an environment with the type of equipment that we have, with the product that we have. It's a very exploring thing. So literally, you're kind of hanging out there like a beacon and people are coming to you? Correct. Yeah. How'd you get that to happen? I firmly believe that the environment will dictate the type of people that work at your restaurant. So creating an environment where
people can learn, they can grow, they can be paid justly. We pay 3 weeks paid vacation. We're closed over Christmas and New Year's. Like, there's a lot of pluses. And you also get to work with the best product possible. For a cook, that's the best thing. And you get to do a tasting menu, which is also attractive to people, especially young cooks.
Why?
There's a challenge to working within that sort of environment, especially one where things are constantly changing and you walk in and I've changed half the menu. This morning, my sous chefs came in and I handed them a menu that we're going to run tomorrow, and 3/4 of it is different.
That was one of the criticisms of the show The Bear, which is supposedly he's aiming for Michelin stars, but how can you get Michelin stars? Some say if you change the menu every day, because then there's no way that they can check your consistency.
Sure.
I mean, how do you maintain consistently high standards if you're changing 3/4 of the menu on a nightly basis?
We maintain a consistency within the repertoire that we do. Consistency comes from seasoning. It comes from the way you handle product, the way you source product. Those are the things that keep this type of restaurant with the type of employees that I have fully engaged. If I had chicken on the menu one week and chicken on the menu the following week and chicken on the menu the next week, the product might become more consistent, but the cook is going to become apathetic as to what they're doing. They're not going to be as engaged. They're not going to be as... The desire to want to make that thing better when the thing is static diminishes.
So what were your goals in setting this restaurant up? We've talked about the highest standards. When you looked at this and you said, I'm finally ready to own my own restaurant, is this the first restaurant you've owned?
Correct. Yes.
What's the schematic for this place? You've mentioned the best ingredients. You've mentioned a good working environment. What else?
It's really simple. It is that. It's work with the best product that you possibly can, create an environment where you can teach people so they can also grow and develop and flourish, and also be able to spend time with my family. Like, those are 3 goals that I wanted to create.
And do you think you've succeeded?
We're succeeding in 2 out of the 3. Now that the big hurdle of getting open and being consistently busy is we've achieved that. So kind of reset and be able to spend more time at home.
I come to your restaurant. What's the experience?
You come to my restaurant. We're in the oldest part of Philadelphia. There's cobblestone outside that's been there since the 1700s. We're in a 200-year-old building. You come in and it feels completely different than any other space here in Philadelphia. Everything's been designed to enhance either the guest experience or my staff's experience. From the chairs that you're sitting on to the bespoke plates to the plateware or the cutlery, the glassware, the music selection, everything's there to enhance your experience.
Those are not chairs you bought at Bob's, are they?
They're not. They're not. These were deliberated over for a long time.
And what'd they cost?
They cost anywhere from $800 to $1,200 a piece.
Why? What is that going to do to make... I mean, it's a chair. It's not the main course.
You think that it's just a chair, but it's not just a chair. And chairs in general are expensive. Cheap chairs are expensive.
Why this chair? I mean, it seems kind of outrageous.
It's relative, right? So if I opened a 60-seat, 80-seat restaurant, I'd still have to buy a $300 to $500 chair because that's just what chairs cost. But if I only need to buy 25 chairs, I'm still spending less money than I would have had to if I had a 60-plus seat restaurant.
Okay.
I can purposefully make things nicer in smaller quantities with the same schematic of what my P&L projected and make the same amount of money as a 60, 80 seat restaurant.
So what are you cooking?
We're mainly a seafood restaurant, just as our proximity to the coast here in Philadelphia is relative to our proximity to our farmland in like Lancaster County and Lehigh and surrounding areas. But I think the chefs that I worked for always had a passion for seafood. And I think that chefs are byproducts of the people that taught them. So I think I just inherited this love for seafood from the people that I worked for.
Okay, so give me some examples. What do you do with seafood?
Well, the way that our menu's set up is your opening canapes are, 5 different like raw bar dishes. So mainly raw or manipulated shellfish.
What do you mean by manipulated?
Well, we get something that we deem as wonderful products, but we need to transform it into something that isn't just a raw oyster on the plate. So, for instance, we take our oysters, we steam them whole, and then we shuck them. So they're poached in their own liquid, and then we've had many different variations as time's gone on, but like a sweet potato puree made into a mousseline with caviar and poached oyster, like that sort of, trying to think of what the best expression of the oyster is without doing too much to it. Because my style of food is not very, it's high touch in its technique, but it's not overly manipulated for the sake of manipulation.
I went on your website. I couldn't find a menu.
You get a menu after you finish eating.
Why?
Because there needs to be a bit of theater to the experience. There needs to be a bit of, if you're going to see your favorite band play, they're not giving you your set list first. So why not have a little bit of excitement? You've already made the commitment to coming to the restaurant knowing what it is based off of what people wrote or what Google reviews say. So you should surrender yourself to the experience. And we have a long, extensive reservation process so that we can make sure that we're providing you something that you like, or not giving you something that will make you sick.
So I kind of do a questionnaire when I reserve.
Ming, who's our like office manager, will call you and talk to you personally, because it's about that moment. Like the restaurant experience really starts when you receive your first phone call from Ming. It's not necessarily when you walk through the doors of the restaurant. So your expectation's kind of already there. You already know what you're getting yourself into.
Succinctly, what am I getting myself into?
You're getting yourself into a 25-course tasting menu. That's going to provide something raw, something barely cooked, something cooked, and then end with, a classical entree. And then my pastry chef, Abby, kind of steals the show at the end with what I call the major food groups of dessert. So something baked, something ice cream, something chocolate, something fruit, and something cheese related.
I've always wanted to say the phrase something cheese related. It's interesting. I'm of two minds about tasting menus. I often leave a tasting menu dinner feeling hungry and as if there wasn't enough of the stuff I liked.
Sure.
And I had to fight my way through stuff that didn't please me.
Yeah.
How do you obviate that element of your 25 courses?
Well, I think first and foremost, we cook food that we want to eat. And I think that is translated to the guests, as our enthusiasm for what we're doing is literally on the plate, which I think makes the guests more engaged with wanting to try it, even if it's something that can be polarizing. But the food that we serve is not meant to be challenging in any way, shape, or form. As I've said, and I think it's quoted in that article, food is meant to be evocative, not provocative. It's not meant to challenge you. It should be familiar. There should be elements to each thing that make you think of something that ultimately brings you joy. But here at this restaurant, we do present what I consider a large amount of value for what we're providing. So this isn't a 6-course tasting menu where you do leave, still hungry and you didn't get the thing that you wanted. This menu is all-inclusive. You're going to get truffles. You're going to get caviar. You're going to get the things that are nominally known as, luxury ingredients. But with the amount of time and diligence that we spend in sourcing things, everything is a luxury ingredient. And that's kind of hard to really convey on a printed menu that someone can view online. But if they taste that carrot and it's an amazing carrot, you start thinking about carrots differently. And that's what makes us different.
So let's go through each course. The first course, something raw.
The meal starts with canapes, which happen before anything else. So you sit down, you're greeted. I want the guests to feel an overwhelming sense of generosity just by sitting down. So that's what the first raw bits present. And then you start with an amuse-bouche, which is always a rotating salad of vegetables that we bring in when the farmer's market, which is across the street from the restaurant, is open on Sundays. I'll go and shop personally, pick out what that salad will be. And then you start with crudos, for lack of a better term, but raw fish that's been enhanced by subtle sauces. And to kind of go back to saying, what is this restaurant? And I said, it's a French restaurant that focuses on seafood. My definition of a French restaurant is something that focuses on sourcing, as product is key within the French kitchen, but strong emphasis on sauce work. Sauce work is the foundation of all French cuisine. With your 25 courses or so, you're going to get 20 or so different sauces, whether they're classical, preparations or something that's been, a little bit more imaginative.
So they don't all come from the 5 mother sauces?
They don't all come from the 5 mother sauces, but we are, by nature of this type of restaurant, our food is dictated by what's classical.
What am I going to have there? It sounds like you're doing a ceviche or something.
For example, right now we have harame, which is Korean fluke with borscht and pickled mustard seeds and flavors of Eastern European flavors, but with Korean fluke, where my wife is from Korea. So there is a lot of Korean accents that are throughout the menu in a way that doesn't come off as fusion in any way. It's just my repertoire includes the ingredients of my wife's family. And that's what we eat at home. So it naturally makes its way into the food that I want to cook at the restaurant. So you have 4 to 5 different raw preparations of raw fish that are supported by some sort of sauce that is going to enhance the flavor of the fish. Not unlike a sushi omakase experience.
And the next course?
And the next course will be cooked fish. There's a lot of surf and turf aspects to everything. So, for example, tomorrow night we're doing sweetbreads with bone marrow poached bluefin tuna and truffle with a tonado sauce.
Ooh, that sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
So what do you do to the sweetbreads? For those of you who want to be completely grossed out, who don't like it, yes, it's pituitary gland, but it's fantastic.
Well, one, we get the best sweetbreads we can. They come in fresh, not frozen, which most sweetbreads come in frozen. I've been using the same guy who provides my sweetbreads for the past decade. They get slaughtered at like 1 a.m. and they arrive here at 11 a.m. that day. I trim them, poach them slightly in a court bouillon, and then we fry them and then glaze them in a whatever type of jus that we're supporting it in. The tuna is poached not until it's cooked, but just until it has enough time in the fat, because fat carries flavor, to impart the qualities of the bone marrow into the tuna, but it's still raw.
Qualities of the bone marrow, that's a big hunk of fat, right?
Yeah, but we're getting the bone marrow from the same place that we're getting the sweetbreads from, so it's full circle.
Hey, I'm not going to argue with a big hunk of fat. I was, you had me at fat.
We cook with a lot of fat here.
Which raises the question, our eating habits as Americans. We talk a great game about health. Do you see anyone expressing any interest in that when they're making a choice to eat with you?
No, because I think it's already known that this is going to be indulgent.
This is your cheat day.
And I've been misquoted before by saying that this shouldn't be a restaurant that's full of regulars. What I'm actually meaning is that I think us as a society should reevaluate what dining out is, because I don't think we should dine out all the time because it is unhealthy. So if you're going to make a commitment to dine at a place like mine, it shouldn't be every now and then. It should be that special occasion. It should be that milestone. Like, that's why I have 25 seats and not 50.
It's fascinating you say that, because when you set the expectations, one of the most disappointing meals of my life was an anniversary dinner. I think it was our 20th, which was a surprisingly long time ago, at 11 Madison Park. And this is before they became vegan or whatever the hell they are, if you're not rich enough to get invited to the back room where they apparently served steak. Anyway, I could not have been more disappointed by that $2,000 meal. And I'm not anti-tasting menu. I thought Alinea was phenomenal. But I didn't feel like I got value for my money at 11 Mad.
The value should come from the experience, not necessarily what's on the plate. The contents of the plate are almost ancillary to the overall experience that you're having. So me as the chef of this restaurant, it's my job to be able to create an environment where people are going to have a great time regardless as to what they're being served. It just so happens that the food that you're eating is, for the most part, enjoyed by everybody.
What's with the $14 million stove?
Well, it's not quite that much, but again, it's a relative thing.
Okay, let me rephrase it. What kind of stove did you buy and why, and what did it cost you?
I bought the best possible piece of equipment that I could possibly buy. One, it works.
What's the company?
Maltini. It's a type of oven that, a 3 Michelin star restaurant will have, but I wanted to provide something that wasn't in Philadelphia as just an added benefit of instilling some sort of respect for craft, instilling some sort of respect for your performance, and giving something for my employees to work on that they don't have the opportunity to do so here in Philadelphia as it is. And I feel like that's a way of me showing my employees that I respect them.
And is it an attraction? I mean, is it you can come here and work on this stove?
Absolutely.
What else is the attraction?
We work very hard to create an environment that is antithetical to what's being displayed on The Bear, which I haven't seen the second season, but...
Second season's good, third season sucks. Keep going.
Or the third season. There are so many tropes and so many stereotypes of what working in restaurants, let alone fine dining restaurants, that, one, just weren't my experience really coming up. So I have no ability to emulate them. I went to dine at a very well-known restaurant while I was on vacation with my wife, and one of my former cooks was a sous chef there, and he invited me back the next day to just observe. What I observed was the typical, stereotypical, negative environment of, a 3 Michelin star restaurant where people have traumatic experiences, etc. They didn't hold back because I was there. They exemplified what the culture of that space was. So much so that every single cook, because they all knew that I ran restaurants here in Philadelphia, came up asking if I spoke to people the way that they were spoken to.
Whoa.
And of course, my answer was no, but that same, individual who asked me that, I saw him turn around to an intern and talk to them that same way. So it's pervasive.
When you say the way they talk to people, is it misogyny? Is it abuse? Or is it just the brigade system?
I think it's a combination of all those elements. Inherent racism, misogyny, sexism, all the isms that are negative. They find their way into an atmosphere that is high stress regardless, but they're exacerbated because of the stress. So if you create an environment that is devoid of that, and you can focus on the things like the product and the teaching, everything kind of melts away. And that's definitely what we do at this restaurant, is try to create a tone and tenor of a professional environment where you can grow as a professional chef. It's been said many times, no one can cook Italian food when they're angry, which is not the case. But you cook better when you're happier. That is for sure. And creating an environment where people are, in general, happier will provide a better work experience, which will then provide a better dining experience. Those things are mutually inclusive, especially here where we have a very open kitchen.
The article I read raised a question. Does Philly want this?
They absolutely do, which is why we're nearly fully booked a month and a half out.
So on my not too infrequent visits to Philly, first I go to Anthony's for a cheesesteak. Then I go to Los Tacos Pueblitos in South Philly to get a birria taco. Okay. Then I come to you. What am I going to have for dinner?
I can't project that because I don't know what my purveyors have ready for me yet.
Tell me about the dessert course.
My pastry chef, Abby Dahan. She worked at Guy Savoy in Vegas, but she was the executive pastry chef up here in Philadelphia as this behemoth of a French bistro, brasserie. So her background is very classical. She was born in Paris, but coming here, I wanted, not unlike my food, which is rooted in classics, I wanted someone who had the ability to create and really express who she was, because before she wasn't in an environment to do that. Gâteau chocolat is just gâteau chocolat. Like, it's not going to be anything different than that.
It's usually pretty good, though.
It's excellent, but everything has its place, right? So for me to be able to hire someone like Abby is the greatest gift.
So what am I going to get? I mean, and if I want a classic, if I just want some macaroons, you got those?
Well, we do takeaways and mignardises. Oftentimes they're macaroons. We have a Gâteau Breton as your takeaway every day. We'll always have a rotating souffle. So right now it's a coconut souffle with a dark chocolate sorbet and coconut caramel sea salt.
I'll be there in about 20 minutes.
It's to die for.
What do you see happening to food in America?
What do I see happening, or what do I want to see happen?
Both.
I want to see restaurants become more focused on their work environment, their staff's livelihoods, and less focus on trying to please the masses. There's definitely two things happening, and these are percentage points here. So prior to the pandemic, if your total labor was at 30% and your total food and cost of goods was at 30% and your fixed costs were at 30% and you're left with 10% to play with, it's really hard to reconcile what post-COVID looks like, where your labor is more at like 45%, because everyone had to pay staff more money, which they should, but it's impossible to be able to really adjust that because everything's a percentage. How do you reconcile having a static 30% food cost when your labor's at 45?
How?
The only thing you can do is make your food cheaper. Either raise the cost on your menus, which is happening, or buy cheaper product, which is happening. And now you don't have value. So that $60 half chicken is actually costing the restaurant less from a food perspective because they're buying cheaper product, but it's being passed on to the consumer in a way that's a little bit more disingenuous. So that's a trend that I definitely see happening.
And what would you like to see happening in America?
I'd like there to be more transparency about where your product is coming from, how you're paying your staff. And if that's being reflected on a $225 menu like mine is, I want to be able to speak to where those costs are going and say it accurately. Because if you're eating at 90% of the restaurants in the country, you're just not getting the value for what you're spending your money on.
So I should go out less frequently and spend more.
Yeah, I think so. You're supporting a better cause in that sense.
What's the future for you and your restaurant?
Hopefully we survive. The future here is to keep growing, keep evolving, and get to a place where we need to find new homes for the employees that are here. Being a chef, you develop a trust relationship with your staff, but your staff are going to grow to a certain point where they're going to either supersede you or they need to go somewhere else to work to learn. And I would rather provide another opportunity for my staff to be able to grow into a new role, into something that they want to do, as opposed to me saying, I'm opening up a bistro. Do you want to be the chef? But provide real-time growth for the people that are working here. So Abby at some point should have a pastry shop, because that should be the natural trajectory of her role here.
And I hope she does.
I hope she does too.
And I hope you replace her with someone just as good.
Well, the idea is that she doesn't get replaced. The idea is that you grow the staff in a way that everything's just kind of transferable.
Chef, it's been an absolute pleasure to meet you and chat with you.
Pleasure's all mine.
I'm just down the road, so I'll come see you soon.
Please do. We look forward to it.
Nicholas Bazik on Culinary Characters Unlocked. I'm David Page, and I'll see you next time.